At a fancy dinner with her friends, my girlfriend whispered, "Don't embarrass me tonight, just smile and pay the bill." I agreed. When the waiter dropped off 2 separate bills, the room went silent. There is a specific type of silence that is louder than any argument. It is the sound of reality crashing into a room full of entitled people. I heard that silence for the first time last night. It was the most satisfying sound I have ever heard, and I was the one who composed it. To understand what happened, you need to understand my relationship with Jessica. For 2 years, I thought we were building a future. I am a software engineer. My life is logical, structured, and I value efficiency over flash. Jessica is in public relations. Her life is about perception, image, and social currency. I thought our differences balanced each other out. I saw us as a team. I would build the engine, and she would design the beautiful exterior. We were partners, splitting our bills and making decisions together. I was not a sugar daddy, and she was not a freeloader. That was the story I told myself anyway. Her friends were another story. A pack of 4 women who treated life like a contest and their social media feeds like the scoreboard. There was Catherine, the leader, who was married to a man who was always conveniently out of town on business. There was Maya, who spoke about her trust fund as if it were a personality trait. And there was Olivia, who changed her career path every 6 months, but never seemed to actually work. They were a whirlwind of expensive brunches, weekend getaways, and designer labels. I never fit in with them, and I never tried to. I was polite, but I did not engage with their gossip or their constant one-upmanship. They treated me with a kind of detached curiosity, like a strange pet Jessica had adopted. They could not understand why she was with a guy who wore a regular watch instead of a Rolex and drove a reliable sedan instead of a German luxury car. The event that changed everything was Catherine's birthday dinner. It was at one of those restaurants where the menu does not have prices and the water costs $20 a bottle. Jessica had been talking about it for weeks. She told me it was incredibly important for her to make a good impression. A few days before the dinner, she sat me down. She explained that all of her friends' husbands and boyfriends were successful and that they always picked up the check for these kinds of events. She asked if just this once, I would be willing to cover the entire bill for the table of 6. She framed it as a birthday gift for Catherine and a way to finally be part of the group. I am not a fool. I knew what this was. It was a test, but I also saw it as a calculated investment in our relationship. So I agreed. I told her I would be happy to do it. Her relief was so profound it should have been a red flag, but I ignored it. Last night, we arrived at the restaurant. Her friends were already there, dressed to the nines, and already on their 2nd bottle of champagne. The conversation was a blur of names I did not know and places I had never been. I was an outsider, an observer, and that was exactly how they wanted it. As we were looking at the menus, Jessica leaned over to me. Her smile was tight, her eyes were sharp. She whispered, so quietly that only I could hear, "Don't embarrass me tonight. Don't talk about your boring coding stuff. Just smile, nod, and pay the bill when it comes. Can you do that for me?" And there it was, the truth stripped bare of all pretense. I was not a guest. I was not her partner. I was a function, a wallet, an accessory she needed to complete her image for the night. Something inside me did not break. It clicked into place. All the small moments of disrespect, the little condescending comments, the times I felt tolerated instead of loved, they all aligned into a perfect, clear picture. I saw the system, and I saw the flaw. I looked back at her and gave her my most reassuring smile. "Of course," I said. I agreed. "I will take care of it." She squeezed my hand, satisfied, and turned back to her friends. For the rest of the dinner, I played my part perfectly. I smiled, I nodded. I listened to their stories about yacht parties and trips to Aspen. They ordered with abandon. Appetizers, lobster, the finest steaks, multiple bottles of the most expensive wine. They were not just having a meal. They were running up a score, and I was the one who was supposed to pay for the points. About halfway through the main course, I excused myself to use the restroom. I did not go to the restroom. I found our waiter, a professional man in his 40s with tired eyes. I pulled him aside. "There has been a change of plans," I said, pressing a $200 bill into his hand. "I need you to do something for me. and I need you to be discreet." I explained that I wanted him to prepare 2 separate bills. The first bill would be for myself and my girlfriend, Jessica, only. The second bill would be for the other 4 women at the table. I gave him my credit card and told him to charge me for my bill and Jessica's bill immediately, and to add a very generous tip for himself. "When it is time for the check," I said, "I want you to bring both bills to the table. Place my paid receipt in front of me, and place their check in the middle of their side of the table. Do not say a word about it unless they ask." He looked from the money in his hand to my face, and a small, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. He understood. He nodded once and disappeared toward the kitchen. I went back to the table. The performance continued. They laughed and drank, completely oblivious. Jessica would occasionally glance at me and give me a little approving nod, as if I were a dog that had successfully learned a new trick. Finally, the moment came. The waiter arrived at our table. With practiced silent precision, he placed a small black folder in front of me. It contained my credit card and the paid receipt. Then he placed a second, much thicker folder in the exact center of the table, directly in front of Catherine and Maya. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then Catherine, the birthday girl, reached for the check, probably to admire the grand total I was about to pay. She opened it, and then I heard it. The beautiful, perfect sound of silence. She stared at the bill, her smile frozen on her face. Maya leaned over to look, and her eyes went wide. Olivia and the other friends stopped their conversation mid-sentence. The silence spread across the table like a stain. It was heavy, confused, and laced with the dawning horror of financial reality. Jessica was the last to understand. She looked at the paid receipt in front of me, then at the massive bill in Catherine's hand, and then back at me. Her face went through a rapid series of emotions: confusion, then panic, then a deep, burning rage. Catherine finally found her voice. It was a small, weak sound. "There must be a mistake," she said to the empty air. "He was supposed to pay." I took a slow sip of my water. I looked at Jessica, then at her friends. I smiled, I nodded, and then I spoke, my voice calm and clear in the silent room. "Jessica asked me to do 2 things tonight," I said. "Smile and pay the bill. I have done both. My bill is paid." I stood up from the table, placed my napkin neatly beside my plate, and looked at Jessica one last time. The mask was gone. All that was left was the ugly truth of who she was. "You should probably figure that out," I said, gesturing to the bill. "I believe your share of the lobster is on there." I turned and walked out of the restaurant. I did not look back. I did not need to. The silence I left behind was all the confirmation I needed. The show was over, and they were the ones left to pay for the tickets. Update 1. It has been 1 week since the dinner. A week of chaos, recriminations, and the sweet, sweet sound of my phone not ringing with demands. Thank you for all the comments and the support. It is good to know that standing up for yourself is still something people respect. Many of you wanted to know what happened after I walked out. It was even better than I could have planned. I did not go home that night. I had anticipated that the apartment would become a war zone. Instead, I had packed a bag earlier that day and checked into a hotel. I turned my phone off and slept for 8 solid hours, the best sleep I have had in years. When I turned my phone back on the next morning, it was a digital battlefield. I had dozens of missed calls and a long stream of text messages. The first texts were from Jessica, and they were pure rage. "How could you do that to me? You humiliated me. Call me right now. You are a monster, a cruel, evil monster. My friends hate me because of you. You owe them that money. You promised. You are going to pay it, or I swear I will make your life a living nightmare." Then there were the messages from her friends. They had apparently gotten my number from Jessica in their shared fury. From Catherine: "I have never been so embarrassed in my life. You are a cheap, pathetic excuse for a man. You owe me an apology, and you owe me for my birthday dinner." From Maya: "My father's lawyers will be in contact with you. What you did was fraud." Their threats were as empty as their bank accounts, and they knew it. I did not reply to a single message. Instead, I initiated the next phase of my plan. The apartment we lived in was mine. I had it before I met Jessica. She had moved in a year ago. Her name was not on the lease. On the morning after the dinner, I sent her a calm, simple email. Subject: your belongings. Jessica, after the events of last night, our relationship is over. You have until the end of the week, 5 days from today, to pack your things and move out of my apartment. Please provide me with a time when you would like to do this so I can ensure I am not there. If your belongings are not removed by Sunday at 5 p.m., I will have them professionally packed and put into a storage unit in your name. The first month will be paid for. After that, it will be your responsibility. I think this is the most efficient way to handle this. I did not sign it with love. I did not sign it at all. Her reply was a long, rambling mess of accusations and pleas. She said she had nowhere to go, that I was throwing her out on the street. She said she could not afford to move. This is where my preparation paid off. I had known for months that Jessica's financial situation was a house of cards. She earned a decent salary, but she spent it all, and then some, on maintaining her image. The expensive clothes, the brunches, the trips, it was all funded by a combination of her paycheck and a steady, subtle stream of my money. She would forget her wallet when we went out or ask me to cover a bill that she would pay me back for later, which she never did. I replied to her email with a single attachment, a spreadsheet. For the past 6 months, I had been tracking our shared expenses. Every time she had used my credit card for her personal items, every dinner I had paid for, every weekend trip funded by me, I had documented it all. The spreadsheet showed that over the last year, I had subsidized her lifestyle to the tune of nearly $20,000, outside of our shared living expenses. My email was short. Subject, your belongings. Jessica, I believe you will find that you have more than enough resources to secure a new place to live. You simply need to adjust your spending habits to match your actual income. Attached is a summary of the funds you have saved over the past year by not having to pay for your own expenses. Please let me know when you will be collecting your things. The emails stopped after that. The reality of her situation, presented in the cold, hard language of a spreadsheet, was something she could not argue with. The best part of the fallout, however, was what happened between her and her friends. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that the dinner bill was over $3,000. Without me to cover it, the 4 of them were left to split it. For women who lived on credit and perception, a sudden, unexpected bill of over $700 each was a catastrophe. They did not handle it gracefully. Catherine insisted that since it was her birthday, she should not have to pay as much. Maya argued that she had only had 1 glass of the expensive wine, so her share should be smaller. The argument apparently devolved into a screaming match in the middle of the restaurant. They ended up having to put the bill on multiple credit cards. And the friendship, which was built on the shaky foundation of social climbing, completely fractured. They all blamed Jessica. She was the one who had brought the broke loser into their group. She was the one who had guaranteed he would pay. Her social standing, the thing she had valued more than our relationship, was now in ruins. She had been cast out of the very group she had tried so hard to impress. She has chosen Saturday to move her things out. I will be at my office, running a system diagnostic. It feels fitting. I am debugging my life, removing the corrupted files, and preparing for a system reboot. She thought she could use me. She thought I was just another line of code she could manipulate. She forgot that I am the one who writes the code. Update 2. It has been a month since the night of the separate bills. The process of detangling my life from Jessica's has been both methodical and, in a strange way, deeply satisfying. Every box she carried out of my apartment was another step towards my own freedom. The move out was as pathetic as you might imagine. She did not hire movers. She could not afford them. She and her mother spent a Saturday hauling boxes and furniture out of my apartment. I was not there as promised. I had a friend, a large and imposing guy named Ben, stay at my place to supervise. He told me the atmosphere was thick with resentment. Jessica's mother kept making comments about how her daughter had wasted her best years on me. Ben just stood there, arms crossed, and made sure they did not take any of my things. The real consequences for Jessica and her friends, however, have been far more severe than a fractured friendship and a large dinner bill. My plan did not end when I walked out of that restaurant. That was just the beginning. A few weeks ago, I received a certified letter from a lawyer representing Catherine's husband, the one who was always out of town on business. It turns out he was not just out of town. He was in the process of a long, quiet separation from her, documenting her spending habits in preparation for their divorce. The $3,000 dinner bill, charged to a credit card he was monitoring, was the final piece of evidence he needed to prove her reckless spending of marital assets. The letter was not a threat. It was a request. He was asking if I would be willing to provide a statement about the events of that evening. He wanted to confirm that Catherine and her friends had ordered extravagantly with the full expectation that someone else would be paying. I had my lawyer draft a formal, factual statement. I detailed Jessica's request for me to pay, her friends' ordering habits, and the final bill. I did not add any emotion or opinion. I just provided the data. That statement, I am told, has become a key exhibit in their divorce proceedings. Catherine is not going to get the generous settlement she was expecting. She is going to be held accountable for her lifestyle. Then there was Maya, the one with the trust fund. Her angry threats about her father's lawyers prompted me to do a little research. A few searches of public records revealed that her family's wealth was not as secure as she pretended. Her father's company had been hit with a major lawsuit a few months ago, and their assets were under scrutiny. I did not do anything with this information directly. I did not need to. I simply sent an anonymous email to a well-known financial gossip columnist in our city. The email contained a tip about the restaurant incident, framing it as a story about the children of the elite living large while their family fortunes crumble. I included the names of the restaurant, Maya, and her father's company. The columnist, always hungry for a story about the rich behaving badly, wrote a small but scathing piece about it. The article did not mention the lawsuit directly, but it raised enough questions to cause a stir. The negative publicity has apparently caused a great deal of trouble for her father and their ongoing legal battles. Jessica's life, in the meantime, has completely unraveled. After moving in with her parents, she tried to continue her smear campaign against me. She told everyone I was controlling and financially abusive, but her credibility was shot. Her closest friends, the ones she had tried to impress, were now her enemies. They were telling everyone who would listen the true story of the dinner, painting Jessica as a user who had brought disaster upon them all. The final move I made was for my own peace of mind. Jessica's name was still on the application for the apartment we had been planning to rent together once my lease was up. We had put down a significant security deposit months ago from our joint account. She had been texting me, demanding her half of the deposit back. I contacted the management company of the new building. I explained that we were no longer together and that I would be withdrawing my application. I also sent them a detailed record of the joint account showing that over 90% of the funds in that account, including the entire security deposit, had come from my income. I also included a copy of the spreadsheet I had sent to Jessica, showing the $20,000 of her lifestyle I had subsidized. I suggested that, given the circumstances, the most equitable solution would be to refund the entire deposit to me. The management company, faced with a potential legal headache, agreed. They mailed me a check for the full amount. I emailed Jessica a copy of the letter from the management company, along with the voided check. I told her that I considered the matter of her share of our savings to be settled. She is now truly on her own, no friends, no financial safety net, and a reputation that is in tatters. She is living with her parents, a 30-year-old woman whose entire life of perception and image has been exposed as a hollow shell. She tried to use me as a stepping stone, but she misjudged the stone and fell into the river. Final update. It has been 6 months. The silence on my end has been total, but the echoes of that one dinner continue to reverberate through the lives of the people who were there. I have moved on, but I have also kept an ear to the ground. The final outcomes are, in a word, perfect. My life has improved in every measurable way. I got a promotion at work, I have been focusing on my health, and I have reconnected with old friends who I had neglected while I was busy trying to fit into Jessica's world. My new apartment is my sanctuary. It is decorated with things I like, not things that are meant to impress people I do not care about. It is quiet, it is logical, and it is mine. The lives of Jessica and her friends, however, are a study in karma. Catherine's divorce was finalized last month. As I suspected, my statement had a significant impact. Her husband was able to prove a pattern of wasteful spending, and her final settlement was a fraction of what she had expected. She had to sell her car and is now living in a small apartment, a far cry from the lavish home she once occupied. The queen bee has lost her throne. Maya and her family are still dealing with the fallout from the negative publicity. The lawsuit against her father's company ended in a settlement that cost them a fortune. They are not poor, but their days of casual, conspicuous wealth are over. Maya, I am told, has had to get a real job. The trust fund is no longer a personality trait. It is a lifeline she has to carefully manage. Olivia, the fourth friend, has faded into obscurity. Her social climbing ambitions were tied to Catherine and Maya. With their fall from grace, she has no one left to cling to. And Jessica. Her story is the most complete. After months of living with her disappointed parents, she finally found a new job. It is a step down from her previous position with less pay and no prestige. She has moved into a small studio apartment in a less desirable part of town. She is living the life she can actually afford, and she is miserable. The final, satisfying piece of news came to me indirectly. The waiter from the restaurant, the one who helped me execute my plan, now works at a different establishment closer to my office. I go there for lunch sometimes. He recognized me a few weeks ago. He told me that the story of that night has become a legend among the staff at his old restaurant. He said that after I left, the four women had a full-blown meltdown. They argued for nearly an hour before Catherine's husband, who she had to call in tears, finally came and paid the bill over the phone, an act of finality before his lawyers took over. The waiter then told me something that made this entire ordeal worthwhile. He said that a few weeks ago, Jessica came into his new restaurant on a date. He was not her server, but he saw her. He said she looked smaller, less confident. At the end of her meal, he watched as she and her date split the bill. That is the real victory. It is not that she is struggling. It is not that her friends are gone. It is that the lesson was learned. She wanted me to be a wallet, a silent partner in her life of illusion. But the thing about illusions is that they eventually fade, and all you are left with is the cold, hard reality of the bill. She is finally paying her own way, and I am free. My life is no longer about funding someone else's perception. It is about building my own reality. And my reality is solid, it is stable, and it is paid in full. At a truth or dare game with her friends, she laughed. Fine, my body count is 26. I lied to him when I said it was 1. Everyone gasped. I just sat there in shock. When I asked how she could lie, she rolled her eyes and said, "The past doesn't matter, grow up." I didn't argue. But weeks later, she learned exactly why her past caught up to her. So, my life pretty much ended and restarted on a Saturday night about a month ago. My girlfriend Sarah had her friends over at my place. They were a few bottles of wine in and decided to play truth or dare like they were in high school again. I wasn't playing, just kind of chilling on the floor by the fireplace, half listening. These were her new city friends, the ones she'd collected since moving in with me 2 years ago. They were all sharp angles and loud opinions, a world away from the girl I thought I knew from back home. Then her friend Megan, who is always the loudest one, dares Sarah to tell them her real body count. Sarah gets this weird look on her face, like she's about to perform, and glances over at me with a smirk. I just smiled back, having no idea what was coming. We'd had the talk, you know? The one you have when things are getting serious. She told me she'd only been with one guy before me, a serious boyfriend from college. I told her I'd been with 3. It was a moment I thought was about honesty and building trust. Then Sarah says, real loud for everyone to hear, "Fine. My body count is 26. I lied to him when I said it was 1. The whole room went quiet. You could hear a pin drop. All her friends just snapped their heads to look at me. Their faces were a mix of shock and, I swear, pity. Like I was some poor, naive sucker from the sticks who didn't know any better. And in that moment, I guess I was. I could feel my face getting hot, the blood rushing to my ears. It wasn't just the lie, which was a gut punch on its own. It was the number. 26. It just didn't compute. It felt like she was talking about a different person, a total stranger who I had somehow been living with, sleeping next to, and planning a future with for 2 years. But the worst part was her. She saw everyone staring at me, saw the drama she had created, and she was eating it up. She had this proud, defiant look on her face, like she'd just proven how cool and experienced she was, how she'd successfully pulled one over on the simple, boring guy in the corner. I didn't blow up. I didn't say a thing. I just sat there, kept my face as blank as I could, and when the silence became unbearable, I got up to get people more drinks like nothing happened. But inside, my head was spinning. The trust I had in her, the future I thought we were building, it all just crumbled to dust in about 10 seconds. The rest of the night was a fog. I was on autopilot, smiling, nodding, playing the good host while my mind was racing, replaying every conversation, every moment, looking for the signs I'd missed. Later, after her friends left in a cloud of perfume and whispered gossip, I finally said something. I was standing by the fireplace, and she was cleaning up, humming to herself like it was just another Saturday night. "How could you lie to me like that?" I asked. My voice was quiet, but it felt heavy in the room. She turned around and gave me this huge, exaggerated eye roll. It was the most dismissive, condescending thing I'd ever seen. "Oh, come on," she said, her voice dripping with annoyance, like I was a child. "Don't be so dramatic. It was a long time ago. The past doesn't matter. Grow up." Grow up. She humiliates me in front of her friends, casually admits she's been lying to me for our entire relationship, and I'm the one who needs to grow up. That was it for me. The hurt just vanished, replaced by something cold and hard. A switch flipped. I knew right then, with absolute certainty, it was over. I run a logistics company. My whole life is about facts, numbers, and predictable outcomes. It's about managing risk. A person who can lie that easily, that shamelessly, about who they are isn't just a bad partner. They're a catastrophic liability you can't afford to have in your life. "You're right," I said. My voice was completely flat, devoid of any emotion. She smiled, a smug, triumphant look on her face. She thought she'd won, that she'd successfully managed my childish emotions. "Good. I'm glad you're not going to be a baby about this." She walked off to the bedroom, probably feeling great about herself. She had no clue that I was agreeing with her, that the past matters. And I was going to prove it. I wasn't going to fight with her or yell. I was going to let her own past do all the talking. She came from the same small town as me, and she'd worked so hard to escape it, to reinvent herself as this sophisticated city woman. She was about to get a one-way ticket right back to the place she despised. Update 1. It's been 3 weeks since that night. For these 3 weeks, Sarah has had no idea what was going on. She just thought I'd gotten over it. I played the part. I was quiet, but she just figured I was being mature like she told me to be. In reality, I was working. Thanks for all the comments on my first post. You guys got it. This wasn't just about being hurt. It was about the total, calculated disrespect. First thing I did was take a trip back to our hometown that next weekend. I told Sarah I was visiting my folks. I did see them, but the real reason was to do some digging. It's a small town. Everybody knows everybody's business. I met up with a couple of old buddies for a beer at the one decent bar in town, and I just started asking questions. Man, the stories I heard. It turns out Sarah has a reputation back home, and it's not a good one. She's known for being a user. A tornado, one guy called her. She'd blow into your life, mess everything up, and then disappear, leaving you to deal with the wreckage. She'd find a decent guy with something she wanted, a nice truck, his own place, a good job, and she'd latch on. She'd use them for whatever she could get, all while looking for her next target. Then she'd jump ship, leaving them high and dry. Sometimes with a bunch of bills she'd run up in their name. It was a clear, established pattern of behavior. The lie she told me wasn't a one-time thing out of shame. It was a calculated move to hide her entire history of manipulation. While I was learning all this, she was focused on her new career as an event planner. She was trying to get into the high-end charity scene in the city. She'd actually managed to land a huge client. The annual gala for the city's biggest children's hospital. This was her big shot to make a name for herself, to finally become the person she pretended to be. And guess who was funding the whole thing? Me. I'd already paid the non-refundable deposits for the five-star hotel ballroom, the celebrity chef caterers, the band she insisted they had to have. She was using my money to build a life she was never going to share with me. I saw the invoices. She wasn't just planning an event, she was building a monument to herself. That's when my plan really came together. I wasn't just going to break up with her. I was going to dismantle the fake life she'd built on my dime, using her own past as the demolition crew. I started by making a list of all the vendors she'd hired for the gala. Then I started making another list, all the guys from her past I could find. I'm good at finding people. It's part of my logistics business. It took some time, a lot of late nights scrolling through old social media and making quiet calls, but I tracked down a bunch of the 25 guys. A lot of them were still in the area and had done pretty well for themselves. One was a well-known wedding photographer. Another owned a very successful catering business. One was even a partner at a small law firm. They had all moved on and built good lives, but not a single one had forgotten what Sarah did to them. I started calling them. I didn't say I was her current boyfriend. I said I was a business owner, doing a background check on an event planner I was thinking of hiring for a major corporate function. I just asked, I see you know Sarah from way back. Can you tell me if she's reliable, trustworthy with a budget? It was like opening a floodgate. Every single one had a story about how she'd used them, lied to them, or left them with unpaid bills. The caterer told me about how she'd borrowed a few $1,000s for a business emergency and then ghosted him. The lawyer talked about how she'd run up a credit card he'd co-signed for and then disappeared. I recorded all the calls. I told them it was for quality assurance, so it was all legal. I was building a file on her, a whole collection of character references from the past she said didn't matter. The last piece was the gala itself. The head of the charity committee was this woman, Eleanor Vance. She's old money, a shark in a Chanel suit, and the only thing she cares about is the hospital's reputation. Sarah had somehow managed to charm her in their initial meetings, but I knew that wouldn't last if Mrs. Vance found out who she really was. I got a meeting with her. I told Sarah I had a business dinner with a potential new client. I met Eleanor at her fancy private club and laid it all out. I was calm, professional, and framed it entirely as a matter of fiduciary responsibility. I told her I was the one who had paid all the deposits for the gala, and I'd just discovered some deeply concerning information about my partner's financial history that made me seriously concerned about her ability to manage the event's budget. I didn't even have to show her all my evidence. I just gave her a folder with a couple of notarized, signed statements from guys Sarah had screwed over in the past, detailing how she'd left them with debt. I also threw in some proof that Sarah had a bunch of her own credit card debt she'd been hiding from everyone. I put it to her in business terms she would understand. As the guy guaranteeing the money for this event, I said, I have to let you know about this risk. Her history shows a pattern of financial irresponsibility. And as a result, I am officially withdrawing my financial support. I can't have my name or my company's reputation attached to this anymore. Eleanor Vance read everything without saying a word. Her face was like stone. When she was done, she carefully closed the folder, placed it on the table, and looked at me. Your sense of duty is commendable, Mr. Hayes. Thank you for your discretion. I will handle this. I knew right then it was a done deal. Sarah's entire future was riding on this one event. It was her ticket to the big time, her escape from the past she hated, and I had just handed the power to blow it all up to the one person in the city who would do it without a moment's hesitation. Sarah told me to grow up and forget the past. She was about to learn that the past never forgets you. Final update. It's over. I'm sitting in my office, looking out at the city, and things are finally quiet. The problem has been dealt with. The bug has been removed from the system. The bomb I planted with Eleanor Vance went off less than 24 hours later. She didn't mess around. Sarah got a one-sentence email from the charity committee. Her contract was terminated, effective immediately, due to concerns about professional conduct and potential reputational risk to the hospital. That was it. They didn't even give her a real reason. She came home that night in a total meltdown. I've never seen anyone so hysterical. She was screaming, crying, throwing stuff. She blamed everyone she could think of, the committee, some other planner she was jealous of, anyone but herself. She kept demanding that I get on the phone and fix it, use my connections, threatened to sue them. I just sat on the couch and let her burn herself out. When she finally stopped to take a breath, her voice hoarse from screaming, I said, "There's nothing to fix, Sarah. They know." She looked at me, confused. "Know what?" "They know about your past," I said. "The one you said doesn't matter." You could have heard a pin drop. Her face went completely white. It was like she was seeing me for the first time, and she was looking at an enemy. "You told them?" "I didn't have to tell them much," I said. "I just told them you were a risk. It was a business decision. You of all people should understand that." Her panic just turned into pure rage. She actually tried to come at me, throwing a decorative pillow from the couch. I caught it easily. She was screaming things I won't repeat. The nice, sophisticated mask she wore for her city friends was gone. This was the real her, the cornered, desperate person from that small town. "Get out," I said. My voice was dead calm, and I think that scared her more than if I had yelled. "Pack a bag. Get the rest of your stuff later." She started yelling about her rights, how she lived here, and I couldn't just kick her out. I was ready for that. I had the lease agreement, which only has my name on it, and a formal trespass notice from my lawyer all laid out on the coffee table. "You have 1 hour," I said. "After that, I call the cops." While she was in the bedroom, throwing her stuff in a suitcase, her phone started blowing up. It was the vendors from the gala. Word had gotten out that the event was a mess and the money had been pulled. They were all calling, demanding she pay the cancellation fees for the contract she signed. Her new city friends? They all ghosted her. Nobody wanted to be near the disaster she had become. She left an hour later, dragging one suitcase, her face swollen from crying. The confident woman who had rolled her eyes at me was gone. She was just a mess. But it wasn't over. I had one more thing planned. I'd given a tip to a local gossip blogger I knew through a business acquaintance. A few days later, a story came out. It didn't use her name, but it was all there. The small-town girl trying to make it in the big city, the huge charity event that blew up at the last minute, the rumors of a shady past filled with angry ex-boyfriends and unpaid debts. Everyone in that circle knew it was her. Her career was done. Nobody in this city would ever hire her for an event again. The end came last night. A knock on my door. It was her. She looked awful. She'd been crashing on someone's couch, and it looked like she'd been kicked out. "I have nothing," she said. Her voice was just a whisper. "I lost my career, my friends, everything." "You didn't lose it," I told her. "You spent it piece by piece every time you lied and used someone. This is just the bill." "But what do I do?" she cried. "I have no money. I have nowhere to go." I had a feeling this was coming. I went and got a bus ticket and an envelope with $500 cash. The ticket was back to our hometown. I held it out to her. "You said the past doesn't matter, but it's all you've got left. Go home. Maybe try being a different person this time." She just stared at that bus ticket like it was a death sentence. The idea of going back there, a total failure, having to face all the people she thought she was better than, was the worst thing that could possibly happen to her. It was the end of the fake person she tried to be. She took the ticket and the cash. "No thank you." She just turned and walked away into the night. I shut the door, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. The revenge wasn't about seeing her fail. It was about justice. She built her life on lies, thinking she could just run from her past. But your past is your foundation, and hers was rotten. All I did was give it a little push, and the whole thing fell apart, just like it was always going to.